All right, let's talk Dallas Cowboys. I'm Nick, and this is our daily Cowboys show. Dallas Cowboys, of course, getting ready for their upcoming matchup Monday night. A lot of spicy news to get to today, a lot of interesting stuff to dig into as the Cowboys look to integrate a ton of new pieces coming out of their bye. We'll get to all of that, of course, but first, let's get things started as we love to on this channel with a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser, if you will. And I want to pull up this post I saw on social media courtesy of the Bel Calvante account. And he wrote, Shawnee has done a fantastic job utilizing Javonte Williams in the red zone this year. Williams' red zone stats include 92 rushing yards, which is fourth in the NFL, 28 rush attempts, which is fifth in the NFL, 71.8% rush rate, third in the NFL, and 7 touchdowns, which is also tied for third in the NFL, just handed to Javonte. So there has been a narrative going around with the Cowboys' most recent red zone struggles is that they need to run the football more. They're not giving the ball to Javonte Williams. And if you look at the data and you look at the numbers, that actually isn't 100% factually true. Obviously, I don't look for the Cowboys to throw the football too much, from the 1 or 2 yard line, but they have been running the ball, as you can see from the data here, 5th in rush attempts just with Williams, 3rd in rush rate in the red zone when it comes to Williams. Now, I think the problem is they've had a few total dud running plays. So you go back to Arizona, they had an inside run to Javonte Williams, I think first and goal from the 5 or 6. They lose 4 yards. Okay, now you're stuck. And that's sort of been the problem in the running game for Dallas recently is red zone running has been inconsistent because you need to at least get 3, 4, 5 yards, right? You need to be more consistent running the football. And that's where running back 2, the second running back position, really comes into play. Because if you sub Williams out and bring in, Jaden Blue or Malik Davis or whoever, teams immediately shift, obviously, to a more, pass mindset. We're going to cover more. They're going to leak the back out of the flat kind of thing. And if you're able to hand off to that backup running back, Davis, Blue, whoever, and he's able to get 3, 4 yards, it totally forces the defense into a lose-lose situations. Because if you play the run tight with a more spread attack, you're going to get eviscerated right up. If you play wide and they're still able to run it with Blue or Davis, then you're totally just stuck, right? And I think that's one of the issues the Cowboys have is that running back 2 position. And that's why they've been so, I don't want to say inconsistent about it, but trying to find the right mixture of reps and position for Davis, for Blue to back up Javonte Williams. Because teams understand now when you get in the red zone with Javonte Williams, just attack Williams, just get after him and just totally just make sure they can't run it in with him. And that has forced the Cowboys to adjust their thinking in some instances. Now, I do think they should still run the football with Javonte Williams, but it's one of those things as you work through the season, it's the pendulum swing as teams approach back and forth. Hey, Williams does well in the red zone. Okay, well, they aggressively attack Williams. Okay, we play fake to him, hit some wide open touchdowns. Okay, teams go more pass defense. Okay, back to Javonte Williams. Okay, teams react. It's one of those things. It's a back and forth battle, and it's one of those things the Cowboys will have to improve on coming out of the bye because red zone offense, as we've all seen, has really struggled the past few weeks. And I think the passing game in the red zone has to improve specifically to get teams to back off and allow Williams and potentially the second running back to have a lot of success going forward. All right, let's get into the news. This first post here I thought was the most important one I saw all day yesterday. And there's a lot of spicy stuff to get to. This is courtesy of the DLLS Cowboys X account, and they cite DallasCowboys.com. So we got nested sources here, which is always good. Shawnee on Donovan Ezeraku and contributing, and Quinnen Williams, contributing as leaders. And Shawnee had a lot of great things to say about Ezeraku specifically, coming in as a rookie and developing as a leader for this football team. And I want to focus on Ezeraku here for a second. Obviously, Quinnen Williams taking over the leadership role, that's really important. But let's talk about the rookie. Ezeraku as a second-round pick was a guy that was considered a steal for Dallas to get him in round 2. He was a first-round production guy, had a lot of great physical traits. Just there were other edge defenders that a lot of, draft analysts and teams obviously felt were better. And so he fell to the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys got him, and of course, he's had a really nice season. He's got multiple sacks. He's second among all rookie edges and pressures. He's doing well against the run, hustle player, can force fumbles, all that kind of stuff, right? Great athlete. He's improving, all the things you want to see. It's one of the reasons why they gave him the first start last Monday night. And he's going to be a key piece of this defense, obviously, for years to come. But the leadership aspect, the maturity aspect, I think is really important to me. Because I think that's one of the issues you run into when you have young rookie guys emerging is can they handle the stress, the pressure of being a key defender, a key offensive player, whatever it may be. And Ezeraku at this point is showing he can. And being that kind of leader, being that kind of mature voice so early in his career while improving is incredibly important. And this is where the addition, by the way, of guys like Jadeveon Clowney was a really smart move by Shoddy. Right, sometimes, and most of the time, if we're being totally honest, a lot of teams will just sit there and say, hey, rookie, you're doing well. We'll just let you ride, right? Hey, man, you're becoming a great leader. You're becoming a good football player. Just do your own thing without some good mentorship, without some good guidance. That's what Clowney is. We talked about it at the time a lot when the Cowboys signed Jadeveon Clown. He said, listen, he'll help in a lot of ways for this defensive end group that is struggling, but he's also a mentor for the young guys. He's also a leader for the young guys. And I think Clowney's leadership and mentorship paired with Ezraku's growth and development is something to be really excited about. The future of this Cowboys defense is number 41. Obviously, Overshown, I think, will be a star for many years. Knock on wood. Everyone's excited to see what Revel can do. A lot of questions long-term with the secondary, but there's some good pieces, some young guys there. Logan Wilson coming in to stabilize over the next 2-3 years, right? Quinnen Williams and this defensive tackle group at large becoming a force. Cowboys 2 first-round picks to add more talent to the defense. All that's great. But to me, the leader of this defense going forward in terms of the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years and beyond seems to be Donovan Ezraku. And it does speak to the comparison, the difference between Ezraku and former Cowboys edge defenders, right? You look at guys like Randy Gregory, uber talented, but obviously had issues, nowhere near being a leader, nowhere near being good enough to be a consistent star. I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence, I felt, was a good leader and a good player. I think, Greg Ellis was a good leader and good player. So was DeMarcus Ware, right? I think that's the model Ezraku is. He may not be as freaky athletic as Micah Parsons, for example, but I think his consistent play, his leadership, his demeanor, his maturity is all A+. And that is huge for Dallas, of course, going forward, because we're talking about a team that is building for the future, and Ezraku right now is clearly emerging as one of the key pieces of that development. But Quinnen Williams stepping up as a leader and contributing is important too. And I think this is why this report is the most important news element that broke yesterday for the Cowboys, in my opinion. Because when you acquire a star, when you acquire a big name guy and you spend a lot of capital and then dollars to get him in the building, you expect a lot out of him. And this is one of the reasons why I think the Cowboys were very happy to pay Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb a lot of money for their leadership, for their locker room, presence, for how they carry themselves on and off the field. Their toughness, their willingness to play through injury and play through pain, right? You look at CeeDee Lamb last year, battling, team's bad, quarterback's out, right? CeeDee Lamb had issues, like him and Dak Prescott were not on the same page a lot the first half of the season anyway. It was kind of a down year for CeeDee Lamb for a long time. And they just sort of figured it out and kept grinding, working through the shoulder injury, was basically just gutting it out the entire second half of the season, proved his worth, became a leader. And he is one of the leaders for sure on this team, undeniably so. People look at George Pickens and say, boy, Pickens is having a good year. Him and Lamb are a special pairing. You don't get Pickens emerging as a big-time player if you don't get a guy like CeeDee Lamb coming out again in training camp saying, no, man, we're not 1 and 2. We're 1A, 1B, right? We're the same level. That's leadership. That's maturity, right? That's important. That when you have a guy that's paid a lot of money, who's a star, you need that. We've covered Dak Prescott's leadership a lot. He's obviously, in my opinion, one of the top 2 or 3 leaders in every single facet in the entire NFL right now, bar none, especially when you consider what he has to go through being the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But if you look at defense, who are the leaders been the last 5 years, right, in terms of stars? Trayvon Diggs, listen, I don't want to bash on Diggs, but we've seen the issues with Diggs, specifically over the past couple seasons. Micah Parsons, listen, we know how that story ended. DeMarcus Lawrence was good for sure, but I do think there was a rift between him and Parsons, and I do think that just wasn't something that was going to be solved. That's just unfortunate reality. Normally linebackers are leaders, but Dan Quinn wasn't really a big guy and, relying too much on the linebackers to be, a position the traditional way. And of course, when Van Der Esch got hurt in 2023, that basically ended his involvement in terms of being a leader of this team, a key part of the team. Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, I mean, they're not good enough, right? That's one of the problems. You need a leader to be good. You need a guy that's a star, right? It's you can't have a leader that's on the verge of being benched, right? You can have a guy who's a good emotional guy and a good, standard setter for young players. But to a certain point, your leaders have to be the good players, right? Because if your leaders are guys that may be getting benched or maybe on their way out, it's a tough message to sell. But you have a young up-and-coming star like Ezraku and a veteran stud like Quinnen Williams emerging as guys setting the standard. That's a good sign. The stars have to be the leaders. Doesn't mean they have to be the rah-rah guy or give the speeches, but they have to be, in their own way, leaders of the team. And the fact that Ezraku is emerging and Quinnen Williams doing some good things as well, that's important for the future of this football team. All right, this next report, courtesy of Tommy Yarish, asked Brian Schottenheimer about how Monday being Cowboys rookie quarterback Siobhan Revel's first NFL game may impact how much they want to utilize him. Schottenheimer responded a little bit like DeMarvion Overshown, but probably even a little bit more, being smart. He's going to play. We want him to play, and I think he'll play well, but he is young. He is a rookie, and he plays a very difficult position. But I just love the way that he shows up every day with a smile on his face. He works a lot of times what the workouts are doing with Director of Rehab Britt Brown are harder than what we do on the practice field. We do that for a reason because we want those guys coming back as soon as they can. But I don't think it'll be too big for Savon. I think he's looking forward to it, but we'll be smart with how we use him. Yeah, so Revel's snap count, I think, is something that's very interesting to keep an eye on going forward. Obviously, I don't think he's going to start, right? I don't think he's going to get 70, 80 snaps. I think that would be pretty extreme. I look at Kalen Carson's snap count against Arizona. Carson last week, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, last Cowboys game, played 28 snaps, 18 coverage, 10 run defense, courtesy of PFF. So I think that's sort of the target, that 20 to 30 range. Listen, I think if you look at who's starting for Dallas at the cornerback position, it's still sort of a mystery right now. It depends, I think, a lot on the health of the safety position. But if I had to guess, I would say it would be obviously Bland being one of them, Kyrie Elam being another, and then you basically have Carson and Revel rotating, right? And I think that's probably where we're at. The interesting thing for me would be if you have Deron Bland starting at nickel, Elam at one outside corner, and then a rotation between Carson and Revel. Right. There's a lot of different permutations here. You have Reddy Stewart play some nickel, keep Bland on the outside, and then have maybe Revel and Carson rotate the other corner with Elam being the backup. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this could go. But regardless, I think that 20 to 30 snap count range, similar to what Kalen Carson did against Arizona, again, 18 coverage snaps, I think that's probably what we see from Revel, is my guess. Something like that, right? Maybe even a little less, maybe closer to that 20 than 28 number, but it's different than Overshown, and I'm against pitch counts. I know people, have kind of made fun of me in the comment section for being vocally against them, and I am. But I do think for Revel, there has to be a sort of, I don't want to say earn it, but he hasn't played football. It's not like Overshown, who we've seen him be a star and see him play a lot of football. Revel, hey man, let's see you play a little football first. Let's see how you do. And I think giving 20 to 30 snaps closer to the 20 end probably makes sense to me. But we'll see what happens, right? Kalen Carson, what do you not give him any snaps anymore? Obviously, Deron Bland's your number one guy. Reddy Stewart, he does some good things. What do you do with him? I think we're going to see a lot of guys play corner for Dallas, going forward. Certainly Monday night. We're going to see Bland play basically the vast majority of the snaps, but I think we're going to get Elam. I think we're going to get Stewart. I think we're going to get, obviously, Revel and Carson, right? There's going to be a lot of different guys playing as the Cowboys try and figure out who their best bunch is, and that's smart. That's what they should be doing. In fact, I just want to pull up Kyrie Elam's snaps. It's interesting. If you look at Elam's snap count, he had in the last 3 games, obviously, if you go back to actually the Carolina Panthers game, so he had 8 snaps. He only played 8 snaps against Carolina. He played 67 against Washington, right? That was the first game without Trayvon Diggs. 60 against Denver. Again, Trayvon Diggs didn't play, but only 41 against Arizona, right? So basically, you can see where those Carson snaps came from. So the question for me when it comes to the Cowboys, do they replace Carson subbing in for Elam with Revel, or do they keep that sort of that Elam plays 60%, Carson plays 40%, and then where does Revel fall into that, right? So it's one of those things. Do you get a 3-man rotation there? I don't know. There's a lot of variables, guys. And I think the larger point is because we don't know what's going on, it's going to be something to keep an eye on, and it's going to take some time to figure out, just from a Cowboys perspective, who they want to play, who they not want to play. So it is exciting. It's fun. It's like, hey, listen, let's figure this out. But again, it speaks also to the future mindset of this team, right? The cornerback room is not set. The linebacking room is, which we'll get to in a second, it's not set. D-line, we don't know how that rotation is going to look like. We know there's a battle at right tackle, right? So there's a lot of variables to this team right now, which you would expect, of course, as they try and rebuild and retool for future years. All right, this next report is on that same topic, courtesy of Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star Telegram, who's a great follow, by the way, if you're looking for someone on X to follow. Harris, top-notch reporter. Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer on linebacker, DeMarvion Overshown and quarterback Savon Revel being on pitch counts Monday night, which again is my least favorite word. I hate when that's brought up. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the reason I hate pitch counts is just more of a theoretical, sort of abstract philosophical thing. If you're healthy enough to play, you should play. If you're not healthy enough to play, you shouldn't play. That's always been my motto. The exception being, of course, if it's like a championship game, a playoff game, that falls under a different bucket. But anyway, here's what Harris reported, courtesy of Shoddy. Demo is a guy that's played a lot of football, so you might see him do a little bit more than Vaughn, who is still getting his feet wet. Yeah, I actually think if you are going to do a pitch count, which I hate, but if you are, this is the right framework to take. I mentioned this a second ago. Overshown has played a lot of football. He should probably get 60 to 70% of the snaps, I would guess, at least. And you have Revel get that 20-ish snaps that I mentioned, earlier, right? I think that's sort of the package to go with for the Dallas Cowboys. And what's going to be very interesting for Dallas is, and I talked about this, my post-bye predictions, is there's going to be so much volatility when you have all these rotations and all these guys. Now, the good news is there isn't going to be a clear guy to that's a clear weakness that oh, the Cowboys are just stuck with them, right? I remember last year, one of the frustrations for 2024, even as they won some games in the second half of the season, was you saw guys like Amari Oruwariye or, some of these guys, guys filling in at defensive line with the injuries or even Eric Kendricks, for example, at linebacker. And whether they did good or bad, it was sort of like, this guy's in the future, man. They're just, we're not seeing what the Cowboys are going to be, not even close. Right. And that was a big issue leaving the 2024. I think that's one of the reasons why they didn't bring Mike McCarthy back, is because so many of the Cowboys pieces, right, offensively, defensively, were just, this isn't the future. There are question marks about this team going forward. And Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn and Zimmer in the front office didn't really have a plan in place for a lot of these spots. And now we're seeing that plan come together, right? We've got Carson, we got Revel at corner, right? What's going to happen there? We got Butler coming back. We obviously know Bland's going to be a piece. Reddy Stewart, where does he mix into that, right? Linebacker, Logan Wilson's going to be around for a few years. Overshown. How does Shamar James have certain packages? What do you do with Leah Fowl, right? A lot of questions there, a lot of rotation, a lot of adjustments to figure out. And of course, we know D-line, obviously, Ezra emerging as a stud. 3 good defensive tackles now. What are the Cowboys going to look like? It's going to be one of these things to keep an eye on for sure for the Dallas Cowboys the rest of the season. And that's why I think it's so exciting compared to where they were struggling in 2024. In 2024, it was just like, I really hope they can win because I don't even know. I can't even look forward to 2025, right? This year, it's like, wow, I really hope they can win. And I can definitely look forward to 2026. A completely different flip, changing the leadership for the Cowboys, changing the focus. And I think it's a good thing for this team, obviously, going forward. All right, this is also talking about Overshown, which I think is really interesting. This is courtesy of John Machota over at The Athletic. Cowboys linebacker DeMarvion Overshown on potentially being on a pitch count Monday night. And boy, oh boy, the more I have to say that word out loud, it just makes my blood boil. Not a fan of pitch counts. We talked about it, and that's what you want to do coming off any injury, especially for a guy that hasn't played in 300 some days, just ramping them up and getting into it. But we already know, man, it's winning football time. So when the time comes, when the situation comes, if I'm at that play counter at that limit, we already made the conversation where, look, if it's a play that needs to be made, I got to be on the field. Okay, this I'm in favor of. This is good, right? Because, one of the things I've hated about the idea of a pitch count, if it's like, if, let's say it's 50 snaps or whatever, right? And okay, it's big third down in the fourth quarter, right? Okay, can you get off the field here? Whatever it may be, or it's a big red zone series, whatever, right? And you're like, okay, well, shoot, we need DeMarvion Overshown on the field, but gosh darn it, he's at 50, can't play the next 5 snaps. That kind of mentality, I think, is dumb. The fact of listen, we're targeting you for, my guess probably actually would be around 45, 50 snaps. I would guess something to that, around that number. But if we need you to make plays and we got stuff for you to do, and it's the fourth quarter and it's got to make a play, we're going to keep you on the field and let you make the play. And I think that's the right approach to take, both from a Cowboys perspective, but also working with Overshown to making sure, listen, man, we want you to be a player. We brought you back from injury. We have you on this team to be a playmaker for us. You're not a guy that's just to go out there and play 50 snaps. And that mindset's really important for young players that you consider to be future stars and current stars, like I think we all expect and hope Overshown will be, is that, listen, man, your job is to go out there and be, like we saw in 2024, certainly the second half of 2024, one of the best playmaking linebackers in the game. That's what Overshown was, right? This is a guy that sacked Jalen Hurts twice in a game, had the greatest pick sticks I've ever seen from a linebacker on Thanksgiving, had, I think, 2 or 3 tackles for a loss against Atlanta, had the fastest sack in the NFL against San Francisco, had a bunch of good open field tackles against the New York Giants, I think in week 4, right? It's one of these, it wasn't a perfect game or perfect season for DeMarvion Overshown. Great 4th down stop against the Bengals, right? There's a lot of moments that come to mind. It wasn't perfect from DeMarvion Overshown at all, but I do think he's a guy that is such a dynamic playmaker that he can just change the game for the Cowboys if he can get back to those ways. He can change the game just for the opposition because he's a guy that could, we got a chance for a big run here. Nope, tackle for loss. Ooh, we set up the screen, pick 6 going the other way, right? Those are the playmaking just advantages the Cowboys haven't had this season at all. They haven't had a guy where, listen, things are going great for the offense. It's going to be a good play. And, this is how the offense draws it up and a guy knifes in the backfield and blows it up, right? They haven't had that, or certainly almost none of that this season. Even their big defensive plays, for example, the pick six to Ron Bland comes to mind. That was because of great pressure on the quarterback. Even the sack fumble of Shamar James, that was a great design. James was unblocked. It was a good play from Shamar James, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like just some freaky athleticism, just like, wow, that's a superstar, right? That's something the Cowboys have certainly missed this season, is a guy who can make those freaky plays, right? Doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Overshown's a guy who, even admit last year, he had some games and moments where he wasn't at his best. But a defensive playmaker in those key moments, and really at any point, the Cowboys have certainly missed that. And I think getting this back into the fold will just be huge for them, obviously starting Monday night, but really for the rest of the season. Exciting to see, again, how Eberflus uses him as well. Again, I made this point about 500 times. I'm going to make it again. One of the benefits of making these trade moves and getting these people healthy, it's a way to evaluate Eberflus. Because if Eberflus can't use Quinnen Williams correctly, can't use Overshown correctly, right, doesn't do a good job integrating Reveler, all that kind of stuff, then he's gone. We all agree, right? That's just a fact, right? I think people sit there and say we need continuity, but if you can't integrate these new pieces successfully, and we're not talking one game. If you have one or two bad games, or if it takes a few games, I get it. That's fine. But down the stretch, certainly the final quarter of the season, we better see something like good defense in terms of, playing together, playing well with these new pieces. If that doesn't happen, and we're not looking like 85 Bears, we're not talking like top 10. We're just saying be good, be solid, be effective. If that doesn't happen, then I think we all agree Eberflus needs to go. All right, let's get into this next report, courtesy of Benjamin Albright. And talking Eberflus and talking defense, and this is and Albright talks about Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos, one of the best in the business. And Albright just basically posted Vance Joseph's sort of creed in terms of playing defense. Joseph says, I don't call a lot of man. What we do is mostly pressure up front with matchup principles in the back end. It's like playing a box and one defense in basketball. It's zoned inside and match outside. These days, the beauty of playing great defense in this league is the ability to have different structures. If you can get defensive backs close to the receivers without giving it that man tag, that's the expertise. Because when you call man, the player has to cover both sides of the route. In this league, that's difficult. Everyone has great receivers. The quarterbacks are so accurate with what we call. We're giving the player one side of the route, and we preach leverage. If you win your leverage outside and the receiver breaks inside, you're going to have a teammate there. It can look like man, but it's not man. That's the beauty of what we do. That's the secret. And boy, oh boy, are the Broncos good at it for sure. And obviously the pressure they get with their front four makes it much easier to play this kind of scheme. But this right here, this from Vance Joseph, this is what the Cowboys are looking for from Eberflus and his concept, right? The idea of the zone coverage, playing as a team. Because it's 100% correct. You can't play man in this league and win. You can't consistently, right? You can mix it in, you can have games, but the reality is if you play consistent man coverage, you're going to eventually just get eviscerated, right? Or you're going to play a good team and you have to switch to playing more zone and your team's not ready to play that and you get eviscerated, right? It's just one of those things. Man coverage against good quarterbacks, good receivers, you lose. That's just a fact. Right? The Carolina Panthers, for example, decided to play a lot of man against Dallas, right? Because, they're down Turpin, they're down CeeDee Lamb, it's just Pickens and Ferguson. We can beat them in man all day long. And Dak Prescott eviscerated them, right? We all remember that game. Pickens had a monster day. That's what happens when you play man against good teams, even with injuries. Good quarterbacks, good offensive coaching, good players. Even a beat-up Cowboys team can eviscerate you. You got to be able to play zone, exactly what Vance Joseph is describing here. Now, the question for Eberflus is he the guy to implement this kind of approach? And this is sort of the discussion point I've been having is Eberflus the right message, but the wrong messenger? Does he have the right curriculum, but is he the wrong teacher? And that's what the Cowboys have to figure out. And to me, that is one of the critical things to evaluate the second half of the season. Is Eberflus closer to Vance Joseph, or is he closer to Monty Kiffin, right? Circa 2012 with the Dallas Cowboys, right? I think 2012, I believe 2012, not, or was it 2013? May have been 2013. I may be having a few years mixed up. But regardless, is he closer to Monty Kiffin, or is he closer to Vance Joseph? And that's what the Cowboys have to evaluate the second half of the season. All right, this is courtesy again of Nick Harris at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Cowboys defensive tackle Quinnen Williams said it only took him a day or two to pick up the playbook. Conditioning-wise, everything, I hit it like I was still playing a game last week. On Sunday, I did kind of a mock game so I could have that same kind of win. Coming back to practice this week was easy, and it's a blessing to be healthy. So that's obviously outstanding news there. Good job, Quinnen Williams. Again, professionals, grown-ups, mature, does a mock game on Sunday. It's an off week, right? He gets traded. Does he decide to go out and say, listen, man, I'm gonna introduce myself to the city of Dallas? Does he do any of that? No, sir. He's putting in the time, mock game conditioning, great week of practice, good wind. A plus from Quinnen Williams, obviously being an adult, being a mature person so far. Now, all those things, of course, are what we expect, but the reality is we see from a lot of players, they really don't have that mindset, or they don't certainly have this level of approach here from Williams, really integrated into the playbook from day one. Obviously, playing defensive line is different. Interior defensive line is probably not to pick on the position, probably the quickest one to pick up just on terms of the schemes and strategies and what you have to do. And I think it's something that he should pick up quickly. That's sort of the expectation. But the fact that he's done that, his conditioning is where it needs to be, did the mock game Sunday, A plus from Quinnen Williams. And again, I love acquiring good players. You always need to be acquiring good players. You got to win with a lot of good players. You can't have one good player. You can't have one great player. You need a lot of good players. But I also love good players who are grown-ups, right? And Quinnen Williams at this point looks like a grown-up, and that's really important. Dak Prescott's a grown-up. CeeDee Lamb is a grown-up, right? One of the concerns with Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs is, are they grown-ups? Are they mature enough to warrant the big expectations and the big salaries? And that's a question, right? I'm not picking on those two guys. There's a lot of people over the course of the last 30 years for the Cowboys who can throw into that mix, right? Are you mature enough to be the face of the NFL at your position? Because if you're with the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to be, right? Micah Parsons, I've said this before, was never the best edge defender in football. That's always been Garrett. You can make an argument Crosby, TJ Watt, right? There's guys like Daniel Hunter as of late who have been superstars as well, that have just come into it and emerged. I've always said Micah Parsons is basically Khalil Mack, right? In terms of how he plays. You make an argument that Parsons is a little bit better, but I'm just saying that's basically what is it. You look at his profile, it's closer to Khalil Mack. But Khalil Mack isn't the face of the position. Micah Parsons has been ever since he showed up in Dallas, or before he left, of course. But he had trouble handling it. That's just a fact, right? Because it's hard to do. Do you have the maturity to handle being the face of your position? If Quinnen Williams plays well for Dallas, he's the face of defensive tackle in the National Football League, right? He may not be the best. There probably are a bunch of guys that are better. Jeffrey Simmons for the Tennessee Titans, for example, is phenomenal. Milton Williams, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, now with the Patriots, phenomenal. Vita Vea, huge run-stuffing defensive tackle who can move for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, phenomenal, right? The list goes on and on. Derek Brown for Carolina Panthers, phenomenal, right? There's a lot of good defensive tackles. But if Quinnen Williams plays well, he's the face of that position in the National Football League. Do you have the maturity to handle that pressure? So far, so good for Quinnen Williams. Obviously, this is where, being in New York, media capital of the world, all that kind of stuff, really is a big advantage for the defensive tackle. I'm expecting him, as a lot of you guys are, to do well, but I love generally his approach and maturity. That means even if he has one good game, one bad game, he has the ability to handle it, move on, develop, and continue to improve himself and this team. This edition, again, it's early. We haven't even seen him play yet, but at least based on the reporting we have so far, good sign for Dallas. All right, and this next report here is also courtesy, this is courtesy of John Machota, excuse me. New Cowboys linebacker Logan Wilson on his expectations for his role Monday night. I'm not totally sure what that looks like, just kind of controlling the controllables, what I can, trying to learn the system each and every day. There's new things every day, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I'm doing my best to learn it as best as I can. And it's sort of a juxtaposition between, obviously Wilson and his position and his comments versus Williams, right? Quinnen Williams playing defensive tackle, a whole lot easier to pick up the scheme than Logan Wilson playing linebacker. And now, for anyone who doesn't know yet, Wilson has been one of the green dot linebackers. He's been given that green dot, which means he calls the defense. The defensive coordinator relays the calls to him. That's what the green dot is. He communicates to the rest of the bunch. So the Cowboys are preparing for him to be their green dot, their play caller at defense. So that's important right there. They're setting him up to be that guy, which is what they need to do, which is what they should be doing. That being said, it means he gets on the field a little less right off the rip, right? If he doesn't have to call the plays, if he just has to go out there and play, then hey, listen, hey man, go out there, we'll tell you where to line up, make plays. But that's not what the Cowboys are doing here with Wilson. They're saying, listen, we want you to be one of our play callers. So it's got to learn the defense, got to figure things out, and it's not going to be easy. This likely means, based on these comments and based on reality, he will not start against the Raiders. I think that's probably a fair assessment. Now, I expect him to play a good bit, right? I expect him to get in, and play, a certain percentage of the snaps. I don't know what it'll be. And I know a lot of people will hear that and be like, oh my goodness gracious, that's unfortunate. And it is, right? But it takes time, guys. You can't expect, can you imagine bringing in an offensive, a quarterback to come in on 2 weeks and do great things? I mean, we saw what Joe Flacco did with the Bengals, right? The way he brought him in. But that's such a great story because that never happens. It never works that way, ever. ever. What Joe Flacco has done this season is ridiculous for Cincinnati. It's a lot harder for any other position, any player to do that especially when you're the play caller. Wilson seems to be trending in the right direction. Every day is improvement. He's been doing a lot of work. He's been working hard. A lot of reports on that, and he's a smart veteran player. So I think he'll become the starter eventually this season, and sooner rather than later. And I expect him to start playing significantly Monday night. I'm talking, I don't know the percentage of snaps. If I had to guess, I would expect it would look something like this. Overshown starts, gets 70-ish% of the snaps, we'll say roughly. And then Wilson may get 30-40% of the snaps. And what they'll do is there may be some snaps where, let's say, Overshown is out, let's say that other 30% of those snaps, and then Murray will slide to Overshown's spot, and then you bring in Logan Wilson to play in that situation, right? Obviously, if it's depending on the, assuming it's like a 1st and 10, a standard deal, right? If it's, a third down or funky sub situation, that's different, of course. But I think that's kind of the structure the Cowboys are going to go with, I guess. It's a 3-man rotation inside. They may have specific stuff for Shamar James and specific packages, but that's kind of what I'm feeling, right? You have, 70% of the snaps Overshown. Murray takes over when Overshown goes out to Overshown's spot, and then Wilson comes in for 30% of snaps to take Murray's spot as the green dot. That way, if he makes a mistake, he has Kenneth Murray, again, to be the other guy on the field. Maybe that's what the Cowboys do. That's sort of my guess. Maybe not. Maybe they sit there and have dedicated snaps where you have the green dot is just Wilson, and maybe it's just Wilson and Overshown, right? That could be something as well. So it's something to keep in and really look at for sure. But it's all part of the Cowboys' long-term process here to figure this stuff out. Most teams, frankly, every single team in the NFL, if you look at what they're doing right now, that they're obviously, they got the players they have. And obviously some teams have made some moves at the trade deadline. They're trying to integrate, of course. But the Cowboys are the only team in the NFL that has so many new pieces at this point in the season, right? And that's something to just keep in mind, guys. A lot of people are like, oh my goodness, what can the Cowboys do the second half of the year? Obviously, offensively, want to see, going back to what they were doing prior to then the past 2 weeks, good moving the football, not good at scoring, like to improve, need to improve there. Defensively, they're getting talent now, right? There's a talent deficiency. They've solved some of that talent deficiencies. They still got big issues, right? Defensive end issue is still there. Safety position is still, right? We don't know about corner. Hopefully it's better, right? So they still have some big talent deficiencies, but they're better. Now it's about integrating all these guys in, and that's going to take time, as Logan Wilson notes here, except for maybe Quinnen Williams, right? Guys that have a simpler deal. So Quinnen Williams, if I had to grade the impact in terms of most to least starting Monday night, I would say Quinnen Williams, I would say DeMarvin Overshown would be top 2, Williams, Overshown, then probably Wilson, and then Revel would be much lower down the list if I'm guessing, right? And we'll have to see how it shakes out, of course. Maybe Wilson starts. Maybe he proves everybody wrong, and the Eberflus company just says, to heck with it. He's doing great. He's a smart guy. We'll just roll with it and see what happens. I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, let's get into the comments, guys. This is first one's courtesy of David Dobbins, 5887. That running back study was specific about 25. It wasn't an aggregate. I definitely used Malfa over Blue. Blue has shown in preseason and so far this season, nada. Plus, Blue is not a Williams replacement candidate, so he can chill. Malfa getting Blue and more carries by the end of the year. I know where I'm at. I'm not risking it with Williams. Dallas dumped DeMarco when he was the best yardage back, and 25 looking for a contract. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's a great point, David. I'm going to give you props there. That's a very valid point. I had almost as many yards as Murray did that year with the Eagles. This while keeping that long-term, big-picture outlook the team seems to employ. There is a noticeable in-club vibe at times, though. Like, comment, subscribe, hype. Well, I will say this. It all comes down to what Williams wants, right? If he's a team-friendly deal, doesn't want anything crazy, then yeah, sure. But you do bring up a great point that if you need a Williams replacement, you need that power back, bell cow back, right? If is Blue not that guy? If he's the change of pace guy for sure, and that seems what he looks like best case scenario so far this season, then maybe Malfa does need some carries to see if he can be, a short yardage physical guy to be eventually that Blue replacement. You bring up a good point there. Definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. Bet on it. M2P writes, I will never pay for unskippable ads. I think that's what the YouTube thing, right? You sign up for YouTube Plus or whatever. You don't have to. You get to pay and you can skip ads or whatever. Yeah, it's one of those weird things, the way the YouTube world works. I don't hate it, right? Because obviously it puts money in the hands of creators' pockets. So everyone who watches the ads and obviously all their members, I greatly appreciate it. But it is a weird model we live in because obviously we went from watching commercials every 10, 15 minutes to these unskippable ads. So it's just the world changing. It's just the way it is, but it is sort of an interesting dynamic we find ourselves in there. Charles Eubanks 5080 writes, really nice presentation and points always. Love palate cleanser each time. Keep up the excellent work. Yeah, the palate cleanser comment is one of the funny ones because it is like, I'm not like not that it's controversial or anything, but it is a very divisive point. There are people out there in the comments, almost every video, they're like, what the heck is he saying? Palate cleanser, the most annoying thing in the world. And then there's guys that really love it. So it's one of those things that's so funny to me. I'm going to keep with it because I think I enjoy it. And I think a lot of you guys, there's definitely more guys who enjoy it than don't. But I do think it's funny that it gets some commentary. I like that. I like that kind of stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Charles, for the comment. Viva la Revolution writes, don't be such a smartass. He's healthy enough to play, but hasn't gone through training camp or even much practice for that matter. They will use a snap count to let him shake off the rust and get back to being used to the speed of the game. Well, I'm just talking about, again, the pitch count thing, which I think you're referring to here, is just the theory of that, just the notion that, well, someone who's played football before, Revel's different, right? He's a guy who hasn't played NFL football before. But if you look at a guy and he's played football before, he's played games, he's started games before, he's played, every snap before, if he's healthy, why won't he play every snap? Well, he's not used to the speed of the game. Well, why isn't he used to the speed of the game? What's he been doing the last, month and a half? What's your training staff doing? And I understand, well, there's only so much you can do to get ready. I get that. But training camp doesn't get you ready for a game, right? Everyone will tell you that. I mean, I played training camp in college. Professionals will tell you training camp doesn't get you in game speed. It doesn't. The only thing that gets you in game speed and game conditioning is playing the game, right? It's the reason why, if you look at college sports, they don't play preseason. 90% of players in terms of starters don't play in the NFL preseason anymore. So I don't really get the idea of you need a pitch count. Now, I understand if, you want to be safe and Overshown's the future of this defense. So I get that. From that perspective, I understand. I just don't like the theory of it. I just don't like the standard that the Cowboys have done with Diggs returning and now with Overshown returning. Listen, if he's a veteran guy and he's healthy, play him. If he's not healthy, don't, right? That's just my mindset, my approach, just from a philosophical perspective. All right, this next comment is from Bing is now OMG doing text Shram quotes. Nick doing text Shram show. Let me try that one more time. OMG, Nick doing text Shram quotes. He is a true fan. All right, let's get into our next comment. This is from Bing is now. OMG, Nick doing text Shram quotes. He's a true fan. Shram is one of those guys that I think just gets lost in NFL history. Just to go on a little bit of a tangent here, he is one of the greatest executives in sports history, greatest executives maybe in business history. What he did with the Cowboys. Obviously, Landry is one of the geniuses of football. The Shram, Gilbrandt, and Tom Landry triumvirate there in Dallas is one of those things I get really frustrated about, that it's not brought up as the premier example of team building and cultural building and just process implementation. What we saw with the Dallas Cowboys from that era, from 1965 to 1985, 20 straight winning seasons, 5 Super Bowl berths, right? However many, 10 or 11 conference championship berths, something to that effect. It's just a monster amount of big games, playoff appearances, playoff wins, an incredible amount of success, right? An unparalleled amount of success. No one has had more consecutive winning seasons than those 20-year Tom Landry Dallas Cowboy teams. Even the Patriots dynasty, they won from 2001 all the way up till 2000, guys, and 19. That was their last, or 2019. That was their, again, 19 straight winning seasons. They fell one short of that when they had a losing season in 2020. So the Cowboys have the mark at 20 straight winning seasons. That probably will be untouched. I just think it's too hard for any team to beat that. If the Patriots dynasty couldn't beat that with Brady and Belichick, nobody will. And it's because the Cowboys built a team and a system, right? If you look at their quarterbacks, Meredith to Craig Morton to Roger Staubach to Danny White, right? It's not like they had one guy. Something they had 2 guys, right? You could look at the 49ers and their great dynasty with the Bill Walsh and then Seifert, right? They had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks back to back, right? They had, of course, Montana, then to Steve Young, right? And then they have Jeff Garcia a little bit at the end of it. The Cowboys had to deal with the guys I just mentioned. They deal with 4 guys: Meredith, Morton, Staubach, Danny White, and then, of course, I think you had a little, maybe a little Gary Hogaboom there in the late 80s or mid 80s at the end there, subbing in for Danny White by 1985. So it's one of those things where they were not super, Tom Brady, 20 years, one quarterback or anything like that, right? They had a lot of volatility, so many completely different players. The late 60s, early 70s Cowboys, different than the late 1970s Cowboys. 100% different team. 100% different team, right? So this was a Shram, Gilbrandt, Tom Landry. That triumvirate there did an incredible job with team building that completely gets ignored by the NFL, historians that want to talk all the time. Everyone, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi. They're great coaches and great, Shula, and those guys are great. Chuck Noll, right? All great, phenomenal, of course. But people sleep on the Dallas Cowboys team. They just sort of sit there and say, Landry Yeah, he did some funky shift thing, right? Yeah, didn't they draft some guys pretty good? Yeah, they were pretty good at that. And it just gets glossed over. The process and the system that Schramm and Landry worked together and implemented, absolutely unprecedented in NFL history. It doesn't get enough attention. And I'm a big Tex Schramm guy. I'm a big Tom Landry guy. I'm a big that era guy of Dallas Cowboys because to me, that is the standard for team building, right? That is how you do it. That is the way you have to do it, and it just doesn't get enough attention. Buddha Namaste 597 comments 100 salute. Thank you, sir, for the comment. I really appreciate it. Tilo Too Cold comments D-Law refused activation last year. That's why he wasn't activated. I didn't know that. Is that 100% true? I didn't know he refused activation. I did find it a little bit strange, by like week 12 that he wasn't. But I thought the Cowboys were kind of like, listen, we're out of it, dude. It just is what it is. You're not 100%. We're just going to let you ride the rest of the season. Was it an actual refusal from DeMarcus Lawrence? I did not know that at all. And that brings up the question if the Cowboys kind of dealt with that last year. And if Lawrence refused activation, you better believe players in the locker room knew that. Does Diggs refuse the same thing? Definitely something to keep an eye on there for sure. Wanton Soup 88. Would it be crazy to try Maris Leofau out at safety? Dude likes to crack and is a playmaker. I don't think it's the craziest thought in the world, but I do think outside linebacker obviously makes more sense. He plays out more in space. He's a playmaking force. I think safety is a little different in today's NFL. I know a lot of people see safeties and they look at Hamilton for Baltimore, Amon Wari for the Seattle Seahawks this year and say, oh, they're living in the box, they're making all kinds of plays and stuff like that. And Leofau can live in that world, but the reason those safeties can do that is because they can also play cover two and single high. They can do everything. Leofau couldn't do that, right? At least I don't think he could, but I think he can definitely is a playmaker and a hitting machine for sure. He's a physical force. I love him at outside linebacker personally. I think that's the best fit for him in terms of allowing him to live up to his skill sets in terms of just being a whirling dervish flying around making plays. So I think he's doing a great job at that position. I think moving him to safety, I get the idea and the thought, but I don't really know if that's the best spot for him. I think the Cowboys probably are looking more for traditional safety play. If they are looking for a playmaker, it's more of the, Hamilton, Amon Wari, kind of type, as opposed to a Leofau type. And if we're being totally honest here, it's a lot harder to go, big to small, go from linebacker to safety than it is to go from safety to linebacker, right? Marquise Bell, I thought Dan Quinn was foolish for doing this long term in terms of basically the entire 2023 season. He moved from safety to linebacker, right? And he actually could play linebacker. He was not good against the run at all. He was awful against the run, but he could actually, in some instances, play linebacker. I don't know if you can move a linebacker to safety. I don't know if it is that easy to do. You can move like a nickel corner to safety. We've seen that a few times already this season for Dallas because of all the injuries. But I don't think you can go, linebacker to safety. Big to small is a lot harder than go to small to big, at least historically. But you never know. Leofau is certainly a good athlete. Maybe he's the one that could handle it. But I do want to comment on your handle here because Wanton Soup right there. So if your name is Juan, Juan, and it's a play on wonton soup, WONTON soup. I'm going to give you props here. If that's how you designed it, that is the best handle I've ever seen. That is if you integrated your name into wonton soup like that, that's A+ work from a handle perspective. And you deserve props for that, sir. That is phenomenal. I laughed at that when I was preparing for the show. I saw that and I was like, what is that looking like? And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a great handle. I do see some funny handles every once in a while. So if you want to make sure your comment maybe gets a chance, if you're not a member, that is, member comments will always get read. But if you have a funny handle or an interesting handle, that usually jumps out at me. All right, more comments here. First one from BMR Collects, regular commenter. Great to see you once again. He writes, this defense is going to look totally different, and I think it will definitely look better. How much better, we will see. But with the additions of Quinn Williams, Logan Wilson, and with the stud and Overshown coming back, plus Malik Hooker and Dono coming back, Revel getting some snaps, Carson getting more comfortable, I can't wait until Monday Night Football to see how they all look. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's definitely an exciting element. It does give a little buzz to the season. Obviously, Donovan Wilson coming back, he's had a rough season. But obviously he can play safety. I mean, listen, not to pick on Marquise Bell. I don't think he's an NFL safety. And Elijah Clark is, he didn't look like an NFL safety at all. So Donovan Wilson is sort of like I mentioned before, I don't think he's had a very good season at all as an NFL safety, but, he's an NFL safety. Malik Hooker coming back, I think just to stabilize a little bit would be nice. Revel getting snaps, Carson getting more comfortable. That's good to see for sure. If they can definitely get integrated successfully, that's going to be a challenge, but I'm excited to see what they do there. Quentin Williams for sure. Logan Wilson and Overshown. Again, I think it's just going to take time. What we're going to see Monday night is not going to be what this defense is actually designed to be, right? It's sort of the closest we're going to see until the next game when Wilson gets more snaps and Overshown gets more snaps and Revel gets more snaps. That's what's so interesting here is that the Cowboys defense is that everything we're going to see Monday night, it's sort of just step one in this new plan, right? It's just part one. The next game, there's going to be more snaps, more integration, and the next game and the next game, right? So that's what's going to be interesting about the process is what we see in the Cowboys' next performance is only going to be part of who they are and part of what they're going to be going forward. It's a big step in the direction because we're going to see the guys on the field for sure. But the reality is, even what we see Monday night, that's only, 60, 70% of what they're going to be with their current guys, with the current guys they have on the roster. Quentin Johnson, 307. Pitch count, it's not baseball. Snap count is more like it. LOL, love your content. Thank you, Quentin. I really appreciate it. Mr. Terminator 73 writes, a little stat of the day, a little palate cleanser to start the day. Nick, you got to get a shirt made up for your channel. I can't wait to see how the defense plays Monday night. DC for life. Yeah, I mean, again, it's the palate cleanser thing. It's kind of funny how that kind of catches on. I didn't really, think of that as like a catchphrase or anything like that, but it just something that just kind of popped in my head at the moment, and I've been doing it ever since now, and I think that's not going away anytime soon. So if you're not a fan of the palate cleanser, feel free to voice your displeasure in the comment section. But I think at this point, based on comments like that, I think it's here to stay. And plus, it's kind of becoming a routine and tradition, and I'm not one to break tradition at this point anyway. Ronald Alexander, 5517, writes, from early reports on Carson, I am excited. As quiet as it's being reported, people are saying that Carson fits perfectly in Eberflus's zone concepts, and as much as he played in the Cardinals game, you didn't hear his name, and that tells me he did his job. He was taking on guards in the run game and won. When Revel gets up to speed with two physical corners, they will go a long way toward fixing our edge run defense. Yeah, and that's going to be one thing going forward for this run defense that, if you look at a major flaw, I think there's two for the defense still. Outside of integration and volatility, it's obviously, very poor safety play. That's not fixed, obviously. That's not going away. And it's the edges of this run defense still have severe flaws. Now, hopefully, better linebacker play fixes some of that. Hopefully, better cornerback play, whether it's Carson or Revel or whoever, can fix some of that. But edge run defense, the Cowboys are still really, really bad at that. I think they will be. Hopefully, Overshown can be a guy that just makes, turns one of those outside runs into a 2-yard loss. So instead of giving up 8-12, 8-12, and then that's just what it is where teams running the outside, instead it's 8-12, 4-yard loss. Okay, instead of now that drive becomes a field goal instead of a touchdown drive, right? Something like that, right? That's sort of the hope with me anyway, with Overshown. Logan Wilson maybe. We'll have to see if the Cowboys with the edge defense, whether it's Clowney or Ezra Raku doing some good things. Does a safety play, new corners, play more confident? That's something to keep an eye on. But fixing the edge run defense is a big problem. And I think that's why the Cowboys, with what they do in the NFL draft, I think a lot of it in 2026, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, is definitely edge defender and safety that can be a box safety to help with some of those things. Mark Buey 8093 writes, hey Nick, I enjoy your palate cleansers. There you go. They keep coming, man. People love the palate cleansers. I don't know, but I have a suspicion that you're not a big fan of pitch counts. I tell you what, Mark, you are a perceptive guy. You can read between the lines right there, and I don't know how you managed to pick up on that, but yeah, I'm not a fan of them. As I've mentioned about 5 million times, I'm sure you guys are very annoyed with me doing that. But thank you, Mark, for the comment. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the commenters. You guys provide good insights and good supports. And again, if you want to criticize me or disagree with me, by all means, go ahead. As you guys know, I will shout it out just as well as I do shout out things like Mark saying nice things about me. So again, I appreciate everybody, appreciate all the viewers, appreciate all the commenters. So keep them coming with whatever thoughts, ideas, concepts you have. I'm happy to read them if they make it into the list. All right, but that's enough of the comment section for today. Obviously, it is a college football slate. It's a fun day, college football. So enjoy it as much as you guys can. If you guys are college football fans, I'm sure a lot of you are. Listen, we got another day of practice. Going to be more of a walkthrough, of course, today for Dallas as they try and just integrate more and get prepared for their Monday night matchup. So listen, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. A lot of new pieces for this Cowboys team coming out of the bye. What's the offense going to look like? Right tackle position battle. A lot of spicy stuff going on right now in Dallas, and I will be here every day to talk through it with you guys, starting with tomorrow, of course. But until then, I am Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.